Hello and welcome to the Big 12 Mafia Show. I'm your host, Nathan Bomber Brown, and with me today is one of our key contributors. That'd be Immaculate View. How you doing, Immaculate?
Good. Great to see you guys today. Thanks for
It's
coming in,
great.
Trey.
Yeah, and Trey, we have Trey Smith from College Game Time. How you doing, Trey?
I am awesome, and it is a pleasure to be with you boys tonight.
It took us a little bit to get it all
Yeah.
scheduled up, and we really appreciate you dancing for us to get to this time slot. But I think we're going to have a lot of fun today.
Absolutely. Let's make it. Let's do it.
All right, that sounds good. I want to thank everybody for being here. These are always tough times on Thursday afternoon. We may or may not have a big crowd, but I know what we're talking about is going to gather a lot of interest, and a lot of people are paying attention. So I want to thank everybody who's already here. If you're new to the show, please subscribe, turn on your notifications. Give us a thumbs up, leave us a good comment or suggestion. I read those and I try to do show ideas right off of them. I've done 3, I think, that came straight off of a comment. So I really appreciate everybody being here, and it's important to us. Let me do a couple pieces of business. The first one is one of my sponsors is BYU Mini Football Helmets. Up in the right-hand corner, there's a QR code. If you're looking for a present, a gift, something for somebody's mantle or an office, scan that QR code, look it up. There's a bunch of cool BYU helmets there. Unfortunately, you can't get any from any other school. He doesn't really do that, but they're great gift ideas, and I really recommend everybody search those out. The other thing is, I want to let everybody know we read through your comments. We try to get to them as much as we can. It matters a lot to me that you guys leave comments. I try to get to the ones that are just free, and those go great. But if you want to guarantee that your comments read, either join the show as a member, and you just have to go to the Big 12 Mafia page, and in the middle of that page there's a join button. Click it, some subscription options will pop up, and pick one of those, and those comments I read first. And then after that, super chats. I read all super chats. And today I think we might have a few, because I know people have strong opinions about what's going on with the AAC and with the ACC, SMU, California, Stanford. We're going to talk about all of it. Really quick, let me call a few people out here early. First of all, I want to give a big shout out to Derek Marie, who's one of our latest subscribers. I'll give a little clap for him. Thank you, Derek, for joining. It's great to have you here, and I really appreciate you becoming a member of the family. It's a great group here, and you'll enjoy your time. Let's call out some people that are here at the beginning. We have, let's see here. So Derek was first, and then we have Conundrum, Glenn Lumen, all the way from the Philippines. Good to see you, Glenn. Moth Prof, Malmy PDX, Immaculate, obviously. Let's see here. Conundrum again. Mr. Monkey Says, good to see you, Monkey. Kendon Shirley, who's one of our members. Good to see you, Kendon. Steve Ohio, Florida, ready for ACC facts. We'll see about that. And then Immaculate says, sure, why not? All right. So let's jump right in. I want to know first, what's your opinion about the SMU buying their way into the ACC, which is basically a flat-out purchase of access into a power conference? And 2, how that is going to, is it a standalone, or is that something that has to go with California and Stanford coming in? Let's start with you. Let's start with you, Immaculate. Sorry.
As far as SMU buying, well, we've all known for a long time. This is kind of their MO. This is what they do. They like to splash their oil money around. I think what we're seeing is, where we're in this mode of consolidation, that folks are looking at as maybe this is our opportunity. If we don't do it now, the window of opportunity may be closed. So for these guys who have wanted to get SMU back into the limelight of where it used to be back in Southwest Conference days, maybe they're looking at this as it, and they're willing to throw down whatever money it takes. To most of us, it's pretty crazy, but I guess that's the SMU way.
What do you think, Trey?
Yeah, no, I definitely think they see this as their last chance to get that proverbial seat at the table, and will literally go to whatever financial extents necessary or needed to do it. The piece of this I haven't seen too much chatter about, that I kind of touched on my show earlier today, is the fact that they're foregoing their distribution, but should this thing work out where all 3 get in and they go the 7 years where they don't take any media revenue, that revenue gets dispersed out to competitors
right
that they're in the conference with.
Yep.
And I just, man, like, that's when you know this is your last chance when you're willing to empower financially your competition in order to get a seat in that conference. I think it's interesting with SMU simply because I feel like they are perfectly positioned to kind of fill that void that's now been left by Cincy and UCF joining the Big 12. And, you know, you look at how desirable those teams became to a Power 5 conference like the Big 12 during this, you know, recent run here in the last 5 years or so on the football side of things. I feel like SMU is now about, you know, perfectly positioned to turn that corner and sort of be one of those teams that carries on that mantle, whether it's getting that, you know, competing for that conference championship and getting that New Year's Six bid year after year. But I get it. You know, if that's what they want, if that's what the fans want, right? Getting teams like Clemson, Florida State, you know, hats off to you. Best of luck. Does it suck for the AAC? Sure. Is it the end of the world? No.
And I think the AAC is going to be pretty strong because it looks to me like they're looking to maybe pick up some Mountain West and even possibly Oregon State and Washington State. So isn't the AAC primed for takeoff?
I don't know that I'm ready to say they're primed just yet. Here's kind of my steps. And I'm speaking in terms as if SMU is gone to the ACC, and along with Stanford and Cal. Okay, if I'm Mike Oresco, if I'm American Athletic Conference, the first thing I'm doing is I'm going to negotiate as high of an exit fee as possible with SMU. They've put all their cards on the table showing they will pay any price to get where they're trying to go. And I think if you look at the precedent that's already been set with the early negotiation fees, early exit fees from Houston, Cincy, and UCF, that's in that $18 million range. And that was on a year notice. Okay. SMU's already inside of that window even.
Right.
And depending on how much longer this clock ticks, that's making that window even tighter to where I feel like if I'm commissioner, I can say, all right, let's talk 20 to 25 million. I don't think that's crazy to command. Then you throw that on top of the near 50 million in exit fees you already have coming in. And granted, it's paid out over years. However, I feel like that's my first step. Let's negotiate as high of an exit fee as possible. Then I'm getting back on the phone with ESPN, and it's not really like a first phone call, but it's more of a follow-up phone call saying, okay, are we still good to go on what's already been discussed? Now, I don't want to misrepresent myself. I don't have any insider knowledge of any details of any conversations that have happened between ESPN and Mike Oresco. But what I'm saying is it doesn't take a genius to look at the situation and realize conversations have been had. And Oresco is very, I would have to say, familiar with what ballpark he could get this thing into as far as renegotiating the ESPN deal should teams like Oregon State and Washington State join the conference. So I'm getting back on the phone there saying, okay, what's the best, what can we do? ESPN obviously needs that time zone. Then honestly, I'm looking at how can I double down my investment on the teams that are existing. The message I don't want to send to schools like Memphis and Tulane, even USF. And I know some people are going, USF, they've been horrible. Well, they've also come up in some of these expansion talks, their location, their AAU status. So I don't want to send a message to those schools that, hey, I got bigger priorities than you. I want to make sure I'm keeping them happy. Then I'm looking at how can I possibly increase my investment in the newcomers, because I know they're kind of frowned upon right now from outsiders like the UNTs, the UABs, even the UTSA, FAU. But I mean, I feel like those programs with this new level of resources and exposure, they're in a very prime position not to become national powers or anything like that. But look at how that level of resources were able to help impact programs like Houston and UCF. As I said earlier, to end up becoming desirable, to the Big 12 conference. So I'm going to look at investing in what I currently have, and then I'm going to go make my pitch. I'm going, whether it's calling up Oliver Luck, which we got confirmation, or for me on my channel last week that his clients. I'm not saying this was the only place to put it out there, but his clients, and this was from a person in direct contact with Oliver Luck. His clients are Washington State and Oregon State, not the full pack like I think was initially reported. But then I'm going to make my pitch, and we've got the ESPN deal already in place. ESPN needs that time zone. These schools give you full coverage of every time zone, basically. And, I don't want to over talk to your question, but, my pitch would pretty much center around, the revenue, the exposure, and the access. I think what it would boil down to from Oregon State and Washington State's perspective is, one, how much money is Aresco going to be able to get from ESPN, and then combined with the exit fee money? And then how important are the big cities and AAU designations to Washington State and Oregon State?
Right.
And then go, okay, which conference between the American and the Mountain West is going to give you more prestige? Not more prestige than what you had, but I'm saying more prestige comparatively speaking.
Right.
And if you can make a case where you can get the revenue and the finances high enough to offset the travel concerns and have something on top of that, along with the exposure and the access. And when I talk about access, I'm talking about that seat at the table.
Right.
And that's also under the pretense that the 6-6 model in the expanded playoffs sustains itself. I think if you look at the Americans' history since they've been in existence, they've gotten the New Year's Six bid every year except 2, and including a CFP run in 2021 with Cincy.
Right.
I think if you look at the media deals already in place between the American and the Mountain West, you've got an $83 million a year versus a $45 million a year. But at the end of the day, geographically, it does make the most sense to go Mountain West. And so as an AAC guy, obviously that would be the angle I would come at it from as far as making my pitch. But that's my 2 cents on it.
I think it's more like 5 or 6 cents. Immaculate.
There's a few things to touch on that. First thing I want to ask you, going back to the SMU part, is do you think Houston's inclusion in the Big 12 is a major factor in why SMU feels the need to do this now? I was kind of thought that in the AAC, SMU at least wanted to see the Houston as their counterpart, and then these other Texas schools that have come up and come in are kind of, I don't agree with this, but maybe below them.
I don't know if I want to give, and this is not a knock at Houston, I don't know if I want to give Houston that much credit necessarily, because I think there's always been that desire. Mm-hmm. I just don't think the iron has ever been as hot as it is now. I mean, you got to think over the course of the last year, it really looked like they were going to join the pack, had the pack, not fumbled
together.
Had not completely fumbled this whole process. So not only do you have that, but then it's like, okay, that gets killed. And then all of a sudden you have this sort of out of left field opportunity present itself. Okay, we'll do whatever it takes. Okay, 7 years, gotcha. And so I think it's the desire has been there. Yeah. And sure, maybe Houston injected a little more life into it, but I think it's more of the way the landscape has shifted that has sort of created this opportunity that's what's sort of pulling those motivation strings more than what any other team was able to get.
It was already there. I think that, there's got to be a little bit of a stick in the craw that Houston got that call up, and we're the ones that have TCU as a rival. We should have been brought into it. But the fact of the matter is Houston gets them into Houston, and TCU is already in DFW. But sorry.
Go ahead. Immaculate. Finish.
Just the other part is your overall broad look at this. I get a lot of people who seem to think that the Mountain West is the better plan, and I get that if you're just looking at a map, and if you're just looking at distances, and you're just kind of taking a surface look at this. But if we were to take rules of consolidation based now on what happened with the pack, I have to look at these people and say, are you not paying attention to to think that the Mountain West and the remnants of the Pac make a good combination, is that not ignoring what we just learned from the Pac? What do you think about that? Is that not just completely ignoring it?
I totally agree. I feel like I've been a broken record over on my channel as far as making this case over and over and over and over again, and arguing with Mountain West fans over and over and over again. I'm not disputing that it makes sense geographically.
Sure.
But to your point, what have we just learned? Does geography even matter anymore in college athletics as it pertains to conference realignment? Now, I understand the non-football sports and those things you have to take into consideration. And yes, losing SMU loses someone you could have potted from that Texas, Oklahoma, and then if we get into basketball season, Kansas with Wichita, because sort of the case that I originally had made a couple weeks ago was, try to pod the scheduling where you're having to, where you're reducing that from Pullman, Washington to, Boca Raton, Florida, as much as possible, right? You had, so you do lose a team there that would have been a part of that. But I still think if you look at the money, which ultimately is the bottom line, between the exit fees and then, like I said, the X factor is what can Aresco get from ESPN? And I want to clarify this for those who may not know. There is a clause in the current media deal with the American Athletic Conference that can be exercised to negotiate the deal up should the value of the conference changes. Now, it does go both ways. If the value decreases, it can be negotiated the other way. But losing UConn, losing Houston, losing UCF, and losing Cincy, none of those have triggered it in that direction yet. Because someone had brought up, will SMU losing trigger that? And I'm like, I don't know that, you lose those programs. I don't know that SMU is the one that just moves the needle to put it over the top, especially if Aresco could pull, the rabbit out of his hat and get these remaining two Pac teams in.
Right. Let's our Webb's one of our members. He says here, Houston is in Houston was a defensive play against the Pac and the SEC. I don't think the SEC, our Webb, but maybe. And UH has a way better performance pedigree than SMU. At the end of the day, the AAC has seemed to have been a breeding ground for sure for good programs. I think the Pac defensive play that's sort of been documented over the years. There was word that TCU and Houston were on some Pac short list, but that never happened. So we don't know for a fact that that's the case. I think the idea that having Houston as a recruiting ground probably by itself carries more weight than any of the other stuff, because Texas schools didn't want Houston in. If it would have been up to the other Texas schools, they wouldn't have wanted Houston because they wanted to continue to recruit that area, have it to themselves. So bringing in Houston may have been a defensive play against the Pac-12. It's possible.
Well,
go ahead.
I was going to say, I think with Houston too, they really fit the basketball brand of what Brett Yormark was looking to build as well. I mean, I know basketball doesn't drive the ship at all, but I mean, you look at what that program has done, and it really, in my opinion, put the Big 12 over the top as the premier basketball conference in college athletics.
Well, remember, Bowlesby is the one who brought Houston in, though.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
Bowlesby.
Right. So
you're right.
I mean, the program itself, I'm not knocking Houston at all. Believe me, they got just as much right to crow being in a power conference as anybody else. That's not what I was getting to. What I was trying to say is the AAC has seemed to have bred these schools over and over again to go and be successful other places. So I am totally with you. I don't understand why schools wouldn't for one thing, you guys make $5 million more a year per school, than the Mountain West does. Mountain West makes $4 million, you guys make $9 million. So that by itself, just on its face, seems like an advantage to me. Now, the current Mountain West commissioner, Gloria, is it? I'm forgetting her last name.
Or something. I think.
Yeah, it's a Spanish name, Latin name. Anyway, she's a smart lady. Mm-hmm. And if the Pac-12 had been led by her, they might have gotten a contract. So she'll probably keep that conference together. I just don't know why Aresco doesn't make a play for Boise State, San Diego State, Washington State, and Oregon State. Those four as a block would be highly competitive and would bring a lot of viewers. So that's my question to you is if he's going to look, why not just go whole hog and try to get all of them instead of just trying to do this piecemeal?
Well, I think the buyouts are a cause for concern on the Mountain West side. Now, I think if you do it in tiers,
right, you get the Pac-12 schools for free now, right?
You get them in, or one thing I love about realignment season are the buzz terms that come out, right? Whether it's war chest or
right,
a vote to dissolve, or
right.
Now recently is the reverse merger. And so as you continue to see, and I'm not knocking those terms, I'm just saying you start to see the trend of they go crazy on social media, but I want to back up for a second to the first thing you said. Yeah, I agree. The American Athletic Conference is kind of like the old school, the early 2000s Oakland A's of college,
right?
Athletics, where they bring a team in, get them to invest, get them to the point where they're desirable, and then a Power 5 conference is able to poach.
Right, sell them to the Yankees.
Yeah, that's right, or the Red Sox. And so, but with that being said, I think that this could be a unique opportunity for Mike Aresco, who is on record as being very passionate about the Power 6 and about the Power 5 being, a media term that, in and of itself doesn't mean anything, but means everything at the same time. And it is really derived from the Autonomy 5 status, which, again, even that's lost some of its luster with the NIL laws. But this could be a unique opportunity if this whole reverse merger thing, and I'm not a TV guy, so I'm not an expert on this, but if there was a way to take your deal that you have in place, merge it with this quote unquote war chest that the Pac-2 now has, obviously we're speaking in terms as if the ACC thing actually happens, which we haven't even gotten to that yet.
Yeah, that's next.
But and then you keep that Auto 5 status, well, they'll get voted out. Well, I mean, you have 15 votes now. If you have the 13 remaining American teams and you've got the 2 remaining Pac teams, and now I feel like you have the bread and butter that you need to go poach those Mountain West teams that you were just referencing, whether that's a Boise, whether that's an Air Force to pair with a Navy, and then maybe you could get Army in there. I mean, how great would the Army Navy being in the same conference be for the American Athletic Conference?
Right, it would be
get Air Force as well, and you have yourself the Commander-in-Chief Cup.
Exactly, and so and then then you got obviously San Diego State. I don't know. You guys would probably be way more in tune to this than me, but I still feel like the Big 12 door isn't closed for San Diego State, but I also have no idea.
Not closed, but probably a little bit in the future. I think they're not in this wave. My whole thing about the AAC and the Mountain West is the more that they stand against each other, the weaker they're both going to be. The problem is you got 2 commissioners who both want to be the commissioner. How do you get into a situation where you only have one commissioner and both commissioners work together in order to make that happen? I don't know. But I think that if for what you're talking about with possible autonomy status, power status, I think the 2 conferences have to figure out a way to come together, or at least most of them. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe, I don't know if the entirety of the Mountain West gets into that, but as long as they're kind of fighting against each other, I don't think either one gets into it. But if you somehow find a way to come together and bring what is there together, where we're going with the CFP, I think you could honestly make an argument for it, because in order to make the autonomy vote worthwhile again, which, as you said, with NIL, it's really not worth that much right now. They need to increase the governance ability of it. And that's going to probably take the entire FBS coming together as a force to push the NCAA, because they used just the power conferences to push for the autonomy conferences. You really can't use the same trick twice. So they're going to have to go bigger than that. And that's where I think that your conference with the AAC, with the Mountain West, they have some potential for negotiation to work their way into that. But I think they're stronger together. So how that comes to be, I don't know. You're more of the expert in that. But I think that if you're going to be an American conference, you got to cross the entire width of America, in my opinion.
We got a
Absolutely.
comment here from Kendon Shirley, who's a Beaver fan and one of our members. Thanks for being here today, Kendon. I know this is important to you. He says, as a Beaver fan, I know after this year we'll lose our coaches and players, and so our team won't be the same. But I'm still excited either way for the Mountain West of the AAC. And I'm going to say this: it's horrible what has happened with Oregon State and Washington State, right?
Those kids. Yep.
We were, at least I was, when I first started my show, I was promoting them being out front and trying to be the first ones into the Big 12, being proactive and not continue to ride coattails, be more proactive in taking control of their own destiny. They were in a tough spot either way, but who knows if those conversations would have, held any fruit, right? We don't know now, but that's something that maybe they could have tried at least. It's difficult though for those student athletes that they're just going to get up and leave. With free transfers now, both schools are going to get gutted if they don't end up in another power conference.
Which to me, again, like makes me think that the administrations of those universities would be looking to somehow preserve that status through a form of a reverse merger or whatever you want to call it. And man, this has nothing to do with any of this, but Oregon State fans, I love that fan base to death, particularly kind of over on my channel. I've seen an uptick in some interactions from Oregon State fans, and that I feel even worse for them now because it's such a passionate, just good bunch of people that this is happening to. And when I say happening, I'm talking about the fans and the student athletes. But shout out to Beaver Nation, man. Y'all are awesome.
I want to get this comment in from R Webb. He's correcting me. And I appreciated R Webb because I don't know Texas like you do. So he's clarifying his SEC comment. He says, my point was Houston was an SEC defensive play because if the Big 12 didn't take UH, the SEC would have exclusive presence with A&M. So I apologize. I stand corrected. Thank you, R Webb. I appreciate you being patient with me. I am still learning.
That's an excellent point.
Yeah, and that's one thing that's been cool. BYU, I've only been knowing about the Big 12 as a member for the last couple of years, so it's been an education ride the whole way. So I'm sure you've run into circumstances where like, wow, this is something I can really begin to learn, and that's kind of where I've been. Let's jump to the ACC now, the big daddy, probably the thing that everybody wanted to join and talk about. By the way, we're a half hour in, so I'm just going to recognize everybody that's joined the channel. Please subscribe, turn on your notifications so you know when our shows are going, and be a part of the community. Leave comments. If you want your comment to be read 100%, either become a member of the channel and just go to the Big 12 Mafia page on YouTube, hit the join button in the middle of the page. You can sign up there, or super chats always get read. I haven't missed one yet. All right. So I'm just going to set the table, and then I want Trey, I want you to take this first. So let's just assume, and I think this is crazy, but let's assume SMU, Cal, and Stanford are now in the ACC. I have two questions for you. One, is the ACC stronger or weaker? So you need to answer that. And you can do this too, Immaculate. And the second thing is, depending on if it's stronger or weaker, what is the next play? And I'm going to give you a horizon of 2026. What happens between now and 2026 with all the schools that potentially could leave? We'll call them the Magnificent Seven, for lack of a better term.
All right.
Go ahead, Trey. I got a lot. So you.
No, that's fine. I'll keep it very concise here.
No, take all you need.
I'm going to say stronger, and here's why. Because I think the way the landscape has been shifting is that there is a strength in numbers element to college athletics, and particularly these Power 5 conferences. Now, that second part, I say stronger in the short term, but I just don't see the ACC. So maybe I'm about to contradict myself because I think it's stronger initially. It appears that way because there's more teams, but then I think you have the top heavy part of that conference. One foot is out if they could just figure out the financial side of it. And I'm not as privy to all that as I know Immaculate View is, but so maybe I am saying weaker, maybe stronger initially because you get more teams, but then long term, I don't think it helps preserve the conference personally.
Okay, immaculate. I know actually what immaculate's going to say, but
He does. We've had
everybody
this
everybody
conversation.
else can hear it again for the 20th time.
Well, for me, I try not to look at this as just what we see on the surface. That's what we're being presented, and maybe it's that simple. When we can go with that, but I don't find that much fun. I like to kind of look into this and say, okay, where's the part that they're not telling us? And I could be way off key on that, or I could be onto it. We're going to find out. But for me, what I see is this is the absolute best opportunity that schools like Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina State, Virginia Tech, Virginia, and Louisville, and maybe some others have to get out with a reasonable cost in a reasonable amount of time. What we have here is Stanford and California needing to get in. They're hurting. We got next year is coming up. They're going to need to find a home, need to find a place. You've got 2 Stanford grad presidents in the ACC, 2 California grad presidents in the ACC, and these are positions of leverage. These are who, the Condi Rices are calling. Like, get us in there. They're pressured. They're having lots of fellow alumni who are going to be pushing them and pressuring them to get this done. So if you are the Magnificent Seven, we'll call them. I think it's more than 7, but we're just going to call that because people are going to know what we're referring to. If you see that there, we've got them. Because if we hold this up and their schools don't get in, they're screwed. And we could just hold this up forever. And then they're not going to go look elsewhere because they want here. So this is the point when you can put the play on the ACC to say, we need a final exit cost, not based on the exit fee that's in their agreements, and not based upon the gore, but what will it take for us to give you right now for us to be free and clear out of here? Now that's going to involve a whole lot. I get that with ESPN and the conference, but this is their shot. And so I think that that's what they're angling for. I don't think that they want $4 million extra because Stanford and SMU is not requiring pay. We've seen Florida State 30 to 40 million is their goal. So I think that the ACC is weaker at first, considerably. Obviously, you're looking at maybe 5 schools left behind, and most of them are going to be like private universities. But here's the hitch. We're talking about that also with Stanford and SMU coming in. 2 more private universities. California, not private, but they like to think of themselves in the same regard in a way. What can that conference then start to invite afterwards, after this happens? Who might be interested in that we wouldn't even think about right now? Maybe up in the Northeast corridor.
Yeah.
League. Right. So, and maybe they just want to put their football in there and that's it. Because they may have to drop down into a lower division if they lose that court case. They should not be having no paid scholarships while you're in Division I. The fact that they've been allowed to do that this long is damn near criminal. But so no, I think they're going to be weaker at first, but they are going to hold together as an A4. But I don't think that they'll be a Power 4, if that makes sense. They'll still be at the table, the voting table, but they will not be considered a power conference per se, and they probably don't really care because as you're seeing, they have money.
So based on that, and Bomber, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this as well, but does this thing happen? Because kind of pre-show, and Bomber, I know you've been on Twitter saying this as well, like this feels very similar to that night before the pack started to bottom out, where you saw, a lot of the same reporters, a lot of the same reports. This is going to happen. This is going to happen. But based off that, do you think there's enough budging to get that sort of flat buyout to get those votes, or do you think it stays at a standstill?
I think the only reason we're here where we are is because of Notre Dame. And Notre Dame is a pickle by themselves, and they're trying to strong arm, and then they're starting to lose some of their power. I think all 3 of us saw that Swarbrick interview on Dan Patrick's show, right?
Oh, yeah.
That was more than illuminating. He was the most insecure I have ever seen him in public. He looked like he'd been to war and back in the last 3 days. He's been out there twisting arms, trying to get people to change their minds and let
Hey,
these schools in.
he's stressing about Navy Saturday. Come
I
on.
know, yeah, maybe.
Hey,
It's
he's a
possible.
Stanford grad too. For anyone who
Or
doesn't realize that, he's a
Maybe he had
Stanford
jet
grad,
lag.
so.
Maybe he was jet lagged. I don't know, from going to Ireland. Anyway, the point is I've never seen him sort of that weak. His posture seemed very, he wasn't in control of the interview or anything else. He normally is very out front and commanding. So that tells me that he's doing everything he can to make this happen. I think Florida State and Clemson especially, and Miami and North Carolina do not want to vote against their own interest. I just don't think it makes any sense. By bringing more schools in, it continues to add more people to this conference that they eventually are going to want out of. The ACC is not a destination conference for big-time football schools. On Twitter, you're hearing a lot of people. Well, I've gotten into these Twitter arguments with people from Wake Forest. The Fighting Deacons, as they are, and they feel very strongly that as far as they're concerned, their conference is the smartest and Big 12's the dumbest. And all I can tell them is Pac-12 thought they were the smartest too, and they're now looking for work. So everybody else, you can be as smart as you want, but smart doesn't win football games. It's not. Tony Altomore would be king of the world if all it took was intelligence to drive some of these things. And I don't want to insinuate that I think he's intelligent. So at the end of the day, where we're at is you have a problem with the conference that eventually is going to disappear. The ACC and the SEC and the Big Ten they've won. The battle is over. They are the dominant conferences. The only question is it a 4-conference A4 that it hangs out? Does it grow to 5 by this Tony Oresco gambit with AAC in the Mountain West? And I don't know if there's enough power there to make that work. If you lose a bunch of schools to the Big 12, SEC, and Big 10, whatever the remainder is could definitely go into an AAC conference and get 20, 24 schools that can at least play organized football. But are they going to have the gravitas it takes to stay up at the big leagues? Does a $17 million annual valuation for schools, can it even keep up with the $50 million that the Big 12 is going to have? Never mind the big money at $100 million with the Big 10 and the SEC. So I just don't think there's enough there. I just, all those reports are trying to move people's opinions through articles and stories and leaked reports. There was a thing in here I was going to bring up. MH Ver, who I love MH Ver. He and I have a good relationship. We've gone back and forth on drops for the last year and a half. He put out a thing, and I can't find the somebody typed it in, but basically he reported if the ACC thing falls apart, he's heard ESPN's going to put the lever to the Big 12 to bring in Stanford so that they don't get left out. That's how desperate Stanford is to not be left hanging in the wind. That report by itself tells me this ACC thing is going to blow up. I just don't think there's enough stuff there to keep it going.
Real quick for you, Trey, and then
you're good.
To go on that. Part of what I'm saying is the leverage that the no schools have had for a while now is that, hey, we can have enough votes to dissolve the conference. Now, no one wants to do that. That's brutal. It leaves some schools out, and they're just totally screwed and have to scramble. But by inviting in more schools like Stanford and Cal and SMU, you're essentially adding 3 more votes to the yes or against the dissolution vote.
Exactly.
And that's why my thought, and this is where me and Bomber are right on the same page with each other. And that's why I say they can't allow them in without getting some assurances for how they get out.
That's right.
Because once they let them in, their threat for dissolution becomes weaker. Absolutely. Because now you need more than 8 votes. So that's why I say now is their opportunity. We'll see. But that's part of it. People in chat are also asking, they don't see the leverage. It has to do with the dissolution threat. It's really all they have at this point in time, because the whole threat of them paying, $500 million to get out and then deal with the courts. It's
this whole dissolution.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, where is that a thing is my question. I mean, that's I think about when's the time a conference dissolved? Well, the first one I think of is like the Southwest Conference. Right. Well, it wasn't a dissolution. I mean, practically speaking, you had 4 teams that were invited to join the Big 8, but they were able to frame and structure it in a way where it was a full-blown merger to form the Big 12. That's why none of the Big 8 or Southwest Conference's history are a part of the Big 12. And then you were left with these 4 remaining schools who had a decision to make. And it was Rice, SMU, TCU, each received an invite to join the WAC, which they accepted and jumped ship there. And then I believe Houston chose to stay independent before eventually joining the Conference USA. And so I see that a lot. I'm not as privy to the legalities around that, because there was some smoke around that with the American Athletic Conference as well. And I was like, this is ridiculous, guys. You don't just vote to dissolve. Like, there has to be, some sort of, and I guess every conference is different, but there has to be, in my mind, some sort of like actual jumping of the ship, which would require, X amount of dollars, which then requires, how do the rest of the dominoes fall? Because in theory, not that it would have sustained itself, but those 4 teams left hanging could have tried to continue the Southwest Conference, but it was impossible at that point. And so is that what we're saying when we say dissolve, or are you saying like literally,
Literally. From what I've seen, I've not looked into the paperwork myself, but the ACC does not actually have it in their bylaws or whatever, how this works. They've never outlined it. They've never said like this. There's been no agreement that this isn't possible. So the theorist on this is that it falls back to North Carolina law, because that is where the ACC was incorporated at. And North Carolina law supposedly is just for a simple majority in order to do something like this. So I'm basing that off of what I've seen about it. Might not be true at all, but if that's their only leverage ploy based upon North Carolina law, is that they would need a simple majority, and that would be 8 out of 15. Now, do I think that is simple and easy, and once it's done, no, it'll be ugly. Like, I don't think anyone actually wants to do that. It's like last resort. We have to get this done somehow. We have to get out. You are not playing ball with us. You're not giving us a way to realistically do this. You have this chance with Stanford, and some folks are saying it's actually in the handbook, and that's fine. But they have this chance right now to grab Stanford and Cal, who are P5 schools, who can, whether you don't think that they're worth or not, they're powerful schools. They can help solidify the league after this type of an exit. If they don't take this opportunity to do this, I think if you're those schools who want to get out, you have enough ammunition, even if this goes to court, to say, we did everything we could. They have their arguments about the ACC network and the expansion and how the promises on that didn't pan out. It just seems like this is it. And there is a way for dissolution. And that's a pretty frightening thing for the schools to be left behind. So I would think that now that they have this opportunity, it's got to happen. And it's an extremely complicated type of situation. So I think that's why we're seeing this push out. Whereas in the Athletic, they said that there was like multiple meetings of different groups of presidents. Yeah. That doesn't seem to me like this is, a united group on this. It's this group and that group. Mm-hmm. And then they're going to, whatever their findings are, they're going to hand that to the ADs to figure out. So, that's just kind of an explanation on that, and maybe to get your thoughts on that and Bomber. But that's where that's coming from. It's the legal talk about the North Carolina situation.
The reason it hasn't happened yet is because there's no pending invites from the SEC and the Big Ten. That's the only reason. They want their contracts to settle down. They want to take a beat before they add any more schools. Otherwise, Florida State and Clemson would have been gone. Miami would have been gone. North Carolina. Those schools all have pending invitations, but they're not real. The Big Ten backed off about a month ago and said, you know what, this isn't going to work for us. It's just not the right time. And the SEC, we've all heard what Sankey said. What's the reason for all these conferences blowing up and all his complaints? He's the first. I mean,
the
he
irony.
Can't complain. Yeah, right. Oklahoma and Texas are on their way over there, and here he's complaining about blowing up conferences. So their moral authority is out the window. These schools are in it for themselves, and everybody needs to realize that. They're making emotional decisions, but they're basing them on their own self-interest. The love of conference anymore outside of 2 conferences is pretty much dead. If an invitation came to the Big 12 from either of those conferences, I don't care how strong they are in the Big 12, they're gone. Nobody's going to think about it. It's over. And so we just need to put it in our heads that the way it used to be football 20 years ago, where you were regionalized, you could guarantee you knew where you could go. You drive to football games. You didn't have to fly. Those days are gone. They're not coming back, and people just need to realize it. And I've been saying for a while, and you can disagree how many there are going to be, but I think we're going to end up with 3 auto qualifying conferences. So we call that an A3, and then you're going to have 2 conferences below them that are going to basically play for a 4th spot. I could see the Mountain West and the ACC doing a scheduling agreement where they do cross-channel type out-of-conference games, and then they have a tournament, and then their champion goes to the playoff every year. It's in the negotiation that they're doing for the 2026 contract. I could easily see that happening, but it's a who's in and who's out world. And those schools that are currently flailing, unfortunately, the Wake Forest, the Washington State, the Oregon States, the Boston College, they're in real trouble. And they're going to need a lot of help. This would be a question for you. I want to get this comment, but I want to ask a question after it. Steele says, couldn't ESPN take the teams they want, roll them into leagues they have, let the others go up and end up paying less for overall? Yeah, they could. But right now, ESPN's the only thing making money at Disney. So they're not really in a position to be pushing schools anywhere. If they could, they would, but they haven't done it. So I don't think it's going to happen, at least this round. The question follow-up for both of you guys is here, this is all moving and it's a moving target. How many conferences do you guys think that we end up with by 2026, and how many teams are in each conference?
I'll give you my answer, even though it may not be a very direct answer to the question. And then I do want to let y'all know I dad duties calling.
Oh, no, you gotta go. I know that. Sorry.
Shout out to all the dads right now that are tuning in, man. I'm right there with you. If you got kids screaming on your shoulders right now as you're trying to get some college football content, I'm right there with you.
I apologize, Trey. I knew
no.
Long. I'm sorry about that.
Time flies when you're having fun. This has been a blast. But here's, I think, my bottom line. And I would say the same thing, removing my American Athletic Conference hat. Whatever happens, please do not remove the seat at the table for the little guy.
Right.
I feel like that would be a disservice to the game. It would be a disservice to fans, and it would just be a disservice to the athletes who compete year in and year out to completely block out or remove, whether you want to call it the G5 bid or the 6-6 model or however we want to frame and structure it. Just make sure you at least have 1 seat at that table, and depending on how much you want to expand that playoff out, maybe 2 for the little guys. And I think it's good for the game. Listen, I get it, right? It may still end up being the same 2 or 3 teams that win it all every year, but you know, I think that those David Goliaths, those Cinderella-esque stories are important for the game, and they're important for fans, even if it's has no correlation to who your team is. I mean, everybody wants to watch that underdog, maybe, just maybe, pull off an upset on a heavily favored or a power conference team. And I think that, oh man, you start getting too far down the line, I don't know that my brain can even begin to process it. But at the end of the day, I just hope they don't take the seat away from the little guy. Every Goliath needs a David. And that's, I'll drop my mic on that one right there.
Okay.
Well,
Go
in
ahead,
response
Immaculate.
to that,
There he goes.
I'd say your champion may come from a direction that you don't realize or you wouldn't see coming. And I think the major champion of the leagues such as the AAC is going to be the gambling industry. Why would they want 30 to 40 teams in the league and no one else? Those games are much more easily to predict. People aren't going to lose as much money on those. But when you start to get down on these other schools that don't know as much about shit, you can fudge the odds and you can do all kinds of things to make a lot of money off of that. Plus, it's just more games to gamble on. So I think, and we know how much money is there. They're not going to go down without a fight with saying, "What, you just want to have 15 games a week and that's it?" Get the hell out of here.
Gonna work.
That's such a loss of money to them. First off,
Right.
and if you start to see all the names and companies that have I just got nailed in chat because of the Iowa gambling. But anyways, they're not going to, I think that they're going to put all their resources towards that. And they have a lot of powerful people who are invested in that. So I would say I wouldn't be so worried about it if I'm the little guys that you're going to get knocked out. I just see it as a threat. They want you and the entire FBS to back their play that's coming up. And it's like, if you don't back it, we're going off on our own. They did the same
that's
thing
a
in
bunch of crap.
2014.
Yeah.
So, but in terms of how I see it going in the future, I think we got phases coming at us. I think the next phase of stopping is at 20. And that's when they're going to do this play on the NCAA with the entire FBS to get more rules. They need to create some things in order to make more money generation. Otherwise, you really can't afford to go farther than that. I think they're going to use the move to 9 and 10 game seasons in order to get this done. You know, we've got some leagues that are at 9 games that'll probably move to 10 games in order to get the money for 20 schools. SEC, people who think that they're not moving, they've not stayed down at 8 just because of competition. They know that there's money in that. And so each time, if they're going to add 4 schools, the big pay for that's going to come out because they're also going to move up to 9 or 10 games a season.
And Mac, I got to cut you off. We got to let Trey go.
You got to go, man. All right.
Yeah,
He's-
hey,
So
Yeah,
look
he's
for
gotta-
20s. Look for 20. I'm saying, yeah.
All right, Trey, give us
8-3.
your outro. Let's get your bid. Tell everybody where to find you and whatnot.
okay, you can find me on Twitter X. It'll always be Twitter to me, but I'm Trey Smith. Very simple. My name, Trey Smith. I'm Trey Smith. Find me on YouTube at College Game Time. Also go to the website, collegegametime.com. Yeah, I do my best, as you guys do, to try to interact and engage with anyone who gets in the comments. And I guess the last thing I'll throw out there is Saturday for the Navy Notre Dame. I'm having what I call a play-by-play watch party over on my channel, live streaming. We're starting at 12:45 p.m. So if you're just hanging out, watching some ball, and want to have a community to engage with and hang out with, come over and check us out at College Game Time, just YouTube channel. And guys, you guys are awesome. I love what y'all are doing and what y'all have been building, and this just like rapid growth that you've had in a very short window of time. And I'm very appreciative to have been a guest on your show tonight.
Absolutely, yeah. We really appreciate you coming, and we'll do this again. We'll get
Absolutely.
together during the
Absolutely.
football season, and hopefully this realignment stuff will settle down. We can talk football.
I
Hey,
know.
Trey.
Yeah,
Hey, Trey. Thanks for taking the bait, and make sure and come back again soon.
absolutely.
All right, we'll see you later. Thanks for being here. Have a great night.
Later,
Have a great
guys.
night, buddy.
Okay, bye-bye. All right. Yeah, you could have gone another 10 minutes.
I could have.
had to
I'm glad
get
you jumped in because I would have. I was just getting started.
I
This
saw
is-
the
it's-
momentum building
It's
up. And
so hard to make the total explanation. This
Yeah.
has been building up for a long time.
You're going to need
so-
to work on that, because on your own show, you're going to have to be able
On-
to keep
You know,
people
it's going to be
paying
so much
attention.
easier, actually. when we do
Okay.
that here
All right.
soon.
Well, I
Because
appreciate that.
we can take it in chunks and
Okay.
kind of work step by step. But I'm looking forward to doing that too, just to kind of give people maybe an all-around look and at least of what I'm seeing, and if they feel differently about it, to take in their opinions. And I've so many times have been wrong and taken other people's opinions and kind of incorporated it in. And I think that's how we actually find out what's going on. It's not going to come from up above telling us.
All righty. Let's start going through some comments here. If you're new to the show, please subscribe. Join our little family here. It is a great place to come and spend a little bit of time. We're going about 5 times a week, and we really appreciate everybody who's been coming back here. We have been a fast growing channel, and that's because of you guys. I give this speech usually once a show. Usually it's at the end, but I just want to make sure everybody knows I recognize how important you guys are to what we're doing here. And the idea is to be nice, and you can disagree without being disagreeable. Cougar Tracks, he's one of our members, has put a comment in here. He says 3 conferences, 20 teams each. I would tend to agree with that. At least that's where I think we are for 2026. After that, I'm not sure what's going to end up happening. It's going to have to really shake out over time. But we'll find out more about that. If you have a comment or question, please put it in the comment section right now. I'm going to open it up for people to join the show since we've got a little bit of time, since Trey had to leave a little bit early. So I'm going to open it up. I'm going to put the invitation down in the comment section. You guys click on that hyperlink, and it'll take you right into the show, and you can come in and ask your question. Meanwhile, I'm going to move down the road here and get to R. Webb, who's another one of our members. He says, don't confuse conference bylaws with media grant of rights. You want to quickly run through that? Your 90-second breakdown of the difference there, Immaculate?
Conference bylaws, media grant of rights. Well, conference bylaws are basically how the conference rules itself. The media grant of rights is each school granting their television broadcast rights to the conference in order to sell them to potential network partners as a whole, instead of each team selling them individually. When they bring it together as a collective, they're, in theory, get a much better deal. Because, some of those schools, if they had to do it on their own, they probably wouldn't even get them sold. So it's a way for the conference to kind of make everyone benefit from that.
Okay, thank you. Moth Prof has a question here. He says, what if the Big 12 is forced to take Calford by networks? In other words, ESPN, because they own the ACC rights. Do they add Oregon State and Washington State to have their own 4 West Wing, then wait for the ACC divide? I don't think Oregon State and Washington State is in the window for the ACC this time. Doesn't mean they won't be in the future, especially because Cal and Stanford would need travel partners, and it would help with their scheduling, certainly. But as of today, I don't even think it's going to happen anyway. But if it did happen, it would only be Stanford would be the definite. SMU and Cal would be maybes. So that's where
I'd put Stanford to the Big 12, California to the Big 10, and that would be on our way towards doing the 5-team divisions in the future with 25 teams. But don't expect Stanford to stay there for too long. And when they leave, that would probably be an open availability for Oregon State.
AMAC says, if this ACC thing happens, does that stabilize the conference to the point where it won't collapse? Even if FSU and Clemson leave, if so, what would the next step be for the Big 12 expansion? I can answer that right now. Absolutely. It won't make it stronger. Yeah, that's a flat out no. It doesn't. And
stronger? Go ahead. I'm sorry. I would say stronger, no. But does it stabilize it for the future so it doesn't completely collapse? I'd actually say yes, because of the private university collection that'll happen there.
That's a stretch, I think. Anyway, but either way, the ACC is not going to come out some major winner if they bring in these schools. It's only buying time.
Yeah,
that's all they're doing right now.
It becomes a different thing. We call it ACC 2.0. It's not like a higher value thing. It's just those schools get to be with schools that they like, but it's not going to make more money.
Right. Nick M says, AMAC, he's answering a comment. Unless negotiated otherwise, I think such a move by the ACC to add Calford and SMU would only be a Band-Aid. The many members of the ACC still want out of the league, and it's lengthy gore. Yep, you're right, Nick. That's it. Thanks for being here. I know you're a frequent viewer. You know exactly how we've been saying that for a while. I completely agree with you. Let's see here. Yep. We'll go down. I like this right here. Kat Dean, welcome to the show. I think you might be a new, either new viewer or new subscriber. Thanks for being here. Either way,
I might know that person.
Smiling, face blue. So a smiling blue face. What does that mean? Do you know what
that's
that
my
means?
wife. That's my wife. She's having fun.
Oh, okay. Hi, wife. Yeah, nice to have you here. Appreciate you loaning them to me.
She's come to see what I've been doing over here in the dark corner.
Yeah. Okay. AMAC, I was hoping for the A3 model. Oh well. Now, I'm not sure what this comment is referring to, AMAC, but we do want, at least I think the A3 model is real. I think it's going to happen. Let's see. Greg Swaim says his show debuts Friday, September 1st, 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. Look him up, people. 2 p.m. Eastern. That'll be a fun show. Yeah, it's good.
It should be quite active and we'll say fun. It should be interesting to see where he goes with some things.
Yeah, Greg's going to be an entertaining show for sure. Daniel Gygax says, sorry I'm late, but my question is what happens in 7 years when SMU wants paid and the ACC doesn't have the money to increase the revenue?
Yeah, really good question.
Does it matter? I think is the better question.
It's kind of hard to look that far ahead right now.
I don't think anybody thinks that if the conference is together, it'll look more like what the future AAC, I think, is going to look like. I don't think, even though there's going to be X power schools in there, I don't think. Yeah, it'll be messy. I guess that's the best word. We can't predict it. 7 years is ridiculous at this point. We might all be playing video games in 7 years. Who knows? Let's see here. These are really good questions, by the way,
Yeah.
guys. Cougar Tracks, and again, one of our members says, "Thank you, Mr. Immaculate, for sharing your knowledge with us. Enjoy your
glad-
comments."
I'm
I
glad
do
people
too.
appreciate it instead of thinking they're just crazy ramblings at this
Well,
point.
they kind of are, but that's okay. Love you
know.
anyway. OPD Don says the goal is to not. Sorry, man, I can't talk today. The goal is to not go to court. I believe they all know where they must go. As Sankey said, they've been contacted, Big Ten as well, and Brett Yormark too. FSU has to pull the trigger soon, unless I don't know what the unless would be. In my opinion, I think they pull the trigger anyway.
Unless probably some type of agreement is made right now. I think of what he's alluding to, like we were saying. If a wide-ranging agreement happens right now, FSU doesn't have to do something ugly.
Yeah, maybe. That seems possible. Daniel Gygax says, Nick M., what other conference wants SMU? No way SEC big sees any value, and the Big 12 is already in DFW. If the ACC doesn't take them, I don't think anybody takes them.
It does kind of feel like the last. I do not see the Big 12 ever taking them. They've already got enough Texas.
Yeah, I don't. I think this is why they're looking at this as their last shot, to be honest.
Dead on. Absolutely. I agree with you.
Yeah, they're desperate, and rightfully so. It's becoming more and more exclusive. I don't question what they're trying to do. I just question that it might have value. I think it's crazy that you could prostitute your school to the point where you'd get nothing for 7 years just for access, and then that a conference would grant that. Again, not blaming SMU for trying. I just think the ACC is wacko for considering it.
Makes me wonder what they've been told. What plans are there at that level for the future that they might see the ACC actually doing in order to do this, because it's a pretty massive investment. So
I don't know. We'll have to see. I think hold our breath maybe. Opie says that there is an agreement and the SMU Cal Stanford ran out of room. LMAO. I don't know. I just don't think it happens. You guys might believe that. I just don't think it does. Here's a good one. Conundrum says PJ Fleck to take over Texas A&M next year. Is that possible, you think?
I mean, I don't know.
Are they going to buy? They going to spend $80 million to buy him out of his contract? Maybe it's down to 70.
I mean, they would have to. What's their own coach? What's he at? And then what's PJ at? I don't know. I don't know if he's the right guy to do that. I mean,
I think it's Urban Meyer to Texas A&M or Texas.
Don't they have someone there now as like one of the assistants that could actually step in for him?
They could. I don't know.
The offensive coordinator.
Yeah, the guy from
Louisville. It kind of seems like they got him in
What's his
place
name?
maybe to take over.
Maybe. I don't know. That seems.
Then you only have to buy one guy out.
Yeah, I
head
don't
coach.
know. I think PJ's got a future at other schools. I just don't know that it's Texas A&M. Let's see here. Glenn Luman from the Philippines. Again, good morning. One of our members. He says, I was dreaming of the guilty pleasure of the poetic justice. Poetic justice of what, Glenn? Which justice? I'm not sure which one you're talking about.
I'm curious.
All right. I think we're about done. Everybody, this has been a great show. I hope you enjoyed it. You know, we were able to get Trey on. He's a pretty popular guy, and I want everybody to recommend go over and sign up for his show, become a subscriber. He's a fantastic interviewer and does really good content, and we really appreciate him being here. Other than that, Immaculate, you have anything else you want to say before we sign out of here?
You know, looking for something possibly to break free this week. Like I was joking around earlier, I think Friday is probably a good day for these folks if they're going to do something big. That way they can take off and get away from everyone for the weekend, and football will kind of take people's mind off of it.
Right.
If not, we just keep on going and seeing what's coming of it. But yep, I'm looking forward to Friday.
I like this. Tony Washington, who's in the house. I
Tony.
forgot to name. He says Phil Hellmuth, next Iowa coach.
Yeah,
Yes, you want the gambler sitting at the table calling deep outs.
I swear Tony's name just pops out of me at chat all the time because he gives so much trouble over the Iowa gambling situation. But you
He
expect
is
that from a
funny.
Gopher.
Absolutely. You guys have been a great show again. We really appreciate everybody being here. I don't think I'm going to have a show tomorrow, but watch Twitter. If I decide to do it, I'll put it out. I'll put it out online, and everybody will know what's coming. Other than that, let's see. Here's a mailbag question of the day from Greg Swaim. If Sankey was really a great commissioner, why does the all-powerful SEC make significantly less than the subpar Big? That's a great question, Greg, that none of us can answer. But
Well,
that's a good question.
As things stand now, they are set to actually make more than the Big Ten in a few years because they are more backloaded.
That's never going to happen. Their
I mean-
contract goes through 2032. The Big Ten reloads again before they renegotiate.
Oh
again.
yeah. Like without
That's-
any more new negotiations,
No.
as it stands, SEC is set to make more. But yeah, that'll change.
Yeah, Big Ten. Think about it now, everybody. Put this in the back of your mind. Washington, Oregon, Cal, and I'm going to throw out UCLA into the new Big Ten West. And Notre Dame is hanging out there. So
Miami.
if you think that the Big Ten is going to be behind the SEC, you got another thing coming. The SEC is going to have to do something to get stronger, and I think that stronger is Clemson, Florida State, potentially North Carolina, and I don't know, the fourth could be any number of schools, but they're not going to sit idle, and it's an arms race at this point. So that's why it's going to be so fun. You guys have been awesome. Everybody have a great night, and look for me tomorrow. I might do a show pop up in the afternoon. I can't promise. Saturday afternoon, I'm planning on doing a Holy Rivals show. That'll be a lot of fun. Wild You'd will be there, and obviously you're invited, Immaculate. Other than that, everybody have a great time and stay out of trouble. Immaculate, want to say bye before I tip out?
We're good. Thanks everyone for coming again. Appreciate it, and we'll see you again soon.
See you later. Peace.